in these past few weeks, never has a book stressed me out this much. These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong is a young adult Romeo and Juliet historical retelling set in 1920s Shanghai with low-key fantasy slash magic realism and high-key body horror elements. It's published by Margaret K. McElderry Books and was released on November 17, 2020. It's 449 pages long, so it's quite a hefty read. Before we get to the review or any other details, I want to disclose the following. 1. My copy of These Violent Delights was purchased with my own money, so neither this video nor this review are sponsored. My thoughts, opinions, and criticisms in this review are my own only and are not meant as an attack to the author. Here is the Goodreads summary for These Violent Delights. The year is 1926, and Shanghai hums to the tune of debauchery. A blood feud between two gangs runs the streets red, leaving the city helpless in the grip of chaos. At the heart of it all is 18-year-old Juliette Cai, a former flapper who has returned to assume her role as the proud heir of the Scarlet Gang, a network of criminals far above the law. Their only rivals in power are the White Flowers, who have fought the Scarlets for generations. And behind every move is their heir, Roma Montagov, Juliet's first love and first betrayal. But when gangsters on both sides show signs of instability, culminating in clawing their own throats out, the people start to whisper of a contagion, a madness, of a monster in the shadows. As the deaths stack up, Juliet and Roma must set their guns and grudges aside and work together. For if they can't stop this mayhem, then there will be no city left for either to rule. Perfect for fans of The Last Magician and Descendant of the Crane, this heart-stopping debut is an imaginative Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920 Shanghai with rival gangs and a monster in the depths of the Huangpu River. As always with every review, let's start with all of the good this book has to offer. Firstly, that cover art is just amazing. It's not colored, the red roses and gold dragon are eye-catching, and are significant to the story and its characters. The red roses being associated with the Scarlet Gang, to be specific. The special editions of the book actually feature the White Flowers version of the artwork with the rose gold edges, and I really want that special edition because I'm a sucker for anything rose gold. Next, let's talk about characters. Overall, a lot of the main and side characters were mostly written well. They were complex, had their own goals and arcs, and they are distinguishable from one another. Let's dive deeper into the characters, shall we? For the White Flowers gang, we have Marshall Suh, Benedict Montagov, and Roma Montagov. Let me just say that Mercutio is hands down my favorite character in Romeo and Juliet. He's extra, he's wild, and his speeches were some of the best in the play. Marshall Suh is just as amazing as his original counterpart. Marshall's given more dimension with his mysterious past, his care for his friends balancing his wild ways, and spoilers, I love the fact that he's canonically queer. I don't know, to me, Mercutio always had a queer vibe to him. Or maybe I just like claiming chaotic queer characters as my gremlin children. Benedict is given more importance and emotional depth too. He's very much a pacifist, avoiding conflict whenever possible, and holds the trio's shared brain cell 95% of the time. He reins Marshall in a lot of the time, and I really love that chaotic gremlin and chaos control dynamic between them. Roma Montagov. This boy is soft. In the best way possible. Let me elaborate. Roma is tough on the outside. He has to be to maintain his good graces within the White Flowers gang. He's strong, but only because he has to be, and he's gone through some. But he's also traumatized by all of the violence he's surrounded by, And that adds a whole different layer to the romantic Romeo retellings we might be used to. Not to say that he isn't romantic, he very much is, but it's not as easily shown, which makes sense because showing romantic tendencies, especially towards your family's enemy, is dangerous. He's still slow to anger, a very stressed boy, and has issues that don't get fully addressed in the first book, which I might elaborate on later. We'll see. But overall, he's an interesting, dynamic character with issues and goals that are compelling to read about. Over onto the Scarlet Gang side, we have Rosalind Lang, Kathleen Lang, and Juliette Cai. I am so glad that Rosalind is given so much more of a role than her original counterpart. She's known as a dancer at the Scarlet Gang Club, but she wants to be known for other things than dancing. She's constantly questioning her identity and where her place in the Scarlet Gang would be. Even if that questioning of identity is a huge theme in the book, Rosalind questioning is quite unique because she's a Lang, which is a house not part of the Cai family's main branch. Unlike when Juliette questions her identity, questioning if she's too westernized to be Chinese. I would have liked to see more of Rosalind and her being active in the story, but I think she might be involved more in the sequel. Kathleen is amazing. She is best girl, Juliette aside. I'm not sure if she has an original Shakespeare counterpart, so if I'm wrong, let me know. That aside, Kathleen's well written too. She's similar to Benedict in that she prefers fighting as a last resort, but she's not a pacifist, as she says. She's clever, wise, caring, loyal, and reliable. She's dynamic and layered, much like the other characters in this book. She's also trans. I can't fully judge how well the trans representation is written because I'm cisgender. What I can say, basing on representation issues I encounter from my non-binary friends and articles or first-hand experiences by the trans community, is that Kathleen's character is rounded. Her being trans is just another part of her. She's not just a token character, she actually is an important side character. I do warn that there are moments where Kathleen's story arc makes commentary on passing, and people questioning Kathleen's identity, so y'all might want to watch out for those. Being trans is a part of her story, but it's not 100% centered around that one thing. Juliette Cai is the icon, the moment, the legend. She is blazing fury personified. She's a complex female character who's also strong, emotional, caring, but also brash, bold, and determined. What I like about her is that she's angry. Silly comment at first glance, but a lot of Asian women and Asian female characters have been portrayed as demure or not wanting to cause trouble, fighting with words instead of fists, and being silent or forced to stay silent. Juliette still faces the effects of a sexist society, and yes, she's still forced to be silent or control her emotions by her family. But while that's going on, Juliette is also written to express her anger, maybe not when her family is around, and even if she has to force herself to cool off later. She's angry for so many reasons that are valid and actually understandable a lot of the time, and she isn't being heard enough, and as an Asian woman angry about a lot of things, if you can see my Twitter or my previous videos or roasts, Juliette's anger and her expressiveness of it is just cathartic and validating. She's intelligent, competent, a polyglot, inquisitive, strategic at times, ruthless when she needs to be, and all of these qualities are used to show how Juliette can lead her gang and be someone who can contend against the literal plague that shows up in her city. And the writing does show that she cares about Shanghai and her family and the people she loves, and she'll do everything to keep it and them safe. I have so many more good things to say about Juliette, but I gotta move this video along. Other side characters are fine. There are a couple of them that are prominent to the story, and I wish we got some more time and development with them because those vital side characters felt a bit one dimensional and stuck to the archetype associated with them. Now it's time to discuss the book's plot and pacing. The plot is not too complex, but that's not a bad thing. I'm glad that it's understandable even in the middle of the story's chaos. There are twists in the plot, with clues or crumbs leading to the twist, so it doesn't come out of nowhere. Predictable, but in an established, logical way. This retelling is very much inspired by the original, in that it captures the chaotic essence of family ties, the intensity of gang rivalry, and adapts a lot of the traits of the original characters, but also remakes them to fit the book's tone and differentiate them from the original enough to be made unique for this gangster filled universe. The pacing was slow at first, but it was used to establish characters' history and relationships, plot and story elements, and it was used for world building as well. Because of all of that, the slow pacing didn't feel bloated. The pacing then evens out at the halfway point of the book and doesn't rush to its conclusion. And lastly, the romance plot. This violent delight takes the original Romeo and Juliet, amplifies the characters' best and worst traits, and heightens the stakes in their relationship. Juliet is intense with her love and hatred for Roma, and Roma is still reeling from the catastrophic fallout between him and Juliet. That's the thing. This book already went past their history as lovers, only teasing it out in tidbits throughout. It's a slow burn from enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers. It's a vicious cycle that doesn't shy away from the trauma both Roma and Juliet and their families have caused each other, which is what I do like about the relationship and its development. It's not a starry-eyed romance anymore, which is fitting for the nature of their characters and their anger, hatred, and other negative feelings that do have reason based on their history. The prose is gorgeous. The writing style is simple yet poetic in some sections and descriptions, but doesn't overdo it or try to fit five mismatched literary devices into like one sentence. There are a lot of quotes that are really memorable, which I really enjoyed. I also like that the flashbacks of the relationship between Roma and Juliet are interspersed throughout the book, which gives readers time to digest what happened and see how it affects their present in real time. This book has a lot of social commentary, a lot of which I'm not as familiar with because I'm not Chinese and I don't have a nuanced enough research of Chinese politics to go off of. But let's start with the social commentary that I am familiar with. I already touched upon this earlier, but the book's takes on sexism prevalent in Asian societies was well done. The book intersects its critiques of sexism within the factors of socioeconomic and familial hierarchies, colorism, and cisgender and heteronormative privileges. That's a lot to take in, so I'll just demonstrate via examples which may include minor spoilers, so be warned. For instance, Juliet may be worried about her cousin, Tyler, usurping her as the next Scarlet heir because he's already inserting himself into Juliet's business and because a lot of their older relatives favor Tyler because he's male and there's a huge issue of sexism, especially in the 20s, and especially when it comes to the hierarchical structure of inheritance, which usually favors male heirs or male firstborns. But the socioeconomic and familial hierarchy commentary also comes in when Rosalind questions her place in the Tsai family because her and Kathleen were brought into the family through marriage. Rosalind is a Lang and so is Kathleen. It's their mother who is a Tsai. So Rosalind and Kathleen don't hold as much power and wealth as Juliet. And then when you think about it, Juliet and Rosalind are, as far as the writing says, both cisgender women, whereas Kathleen is trans. So Kathleen's experience as a trans woman in a sexist and narrow-minded society of her femininity being questioned by others is a whole different experience to Juliette's and Rosalind's experiences as cis women. It's a lot, but the writing juggles these intricate layers of intersectionality well enough to be understood and do impact the story and the characters' actions and goals for the most part. There's also commentary on ethnic/cultural identity and being influenced by the West or other cultures. It's more specific to Juliette since she was the one who was, spoiler, shipped off to America and stayed there for 4 years, hence she was the one who got the most exposure from another culture. When she comes back, she's torn between being used to Juliette Cai, the heiress who's Americanized with her Western-style flapper dress, bolder speech and mannerisms, and Tsai Jun-Lee, an heiress but seems to be lost in the background without her dangerous flapper flair. Yes, even the Chinese and Americanized names factor into this commentary. There's also commentary on racism through the specific use of language and commentary on colonialism that's exemplified in how foreign/white characters react to or treat their local native counterparts. There's a lot more social commentary in these violent delights that I would love to explore, but again, I haven't done enough research for them, so I can't provide proper commentary, lest I get things wrong. And I suggest you look for Chinese or other Asian book bloggers on Twitter or WordPress that have reviewed these violent delights. I'll leave some of their links down below. As much as I praised this book, of course, no book is 100% perfect. So let's get into some issues that I've had with these violent delights. Some character development threads were dropped, mostly on Roma's side. I understand that this book tends to be Juliette focused, and I love that for her. But as a love interest and a lead character, I do think Roma's development also needs to match up to Juliette's so he can be more impactful and compelling. There were two specific character development threads like Roma's paternal issues and his hierarchical rivalry with his cousin that were built upon in the first half, but then dropped as the monster plot kicked in. I'm hoping we'll see more of this in the sequel, even as the plots grow. I was hoping there would be a bit more nuance to some antagonists. I guess for some of them, living up to their stereotype is a reversal commentary, because these types of antagonists are usually the ones who stereotype people. I get that the main conflict is not one person but a multitude of sources, like a plague, monsters, gangsters, etc. But there's also a huge human component in the story, and I was just hoping that the human antagonists might have a bit more complexity to be more interesting, memorable, and distinguishable from the bigger non-human threats. I was also hoping there would be more scenes of connection or bonding between our main and side characters, which would explore their sense of loyalty and familiarity with each other and give more exposure to the side characters. Well, that was a really long review. Overall, these violent delights exposes the dark underbelly of a city covered with glitz and glamour. It takes the original work of Shakespeare as inspiration and heightens the stakes, not only of the family's conflict, but the literal monstrous infestations, familial relationships, and the star-crossed romance between Juliette and Roma, all in the backdrop of 1920 Shanghai, which is not just a part of a setting, but affects the book's social commentary as well. With extravagant prose, mostly compelling characterizations, and a complex, nuanced plot and commentary, These Violent Delights is more than just a retelling. It's a reimagining that stands on its own. That's it for my review of These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. If you liked my review, it would be great if you liked and subscribed, and stay tuned on future reviews on my WordPress blog.